Assalamu alaikum, brother Ilyas. I wanted to make a response video to your video about pork. So I wanted to share my own story about following the command of Allah and quitting the consumption of pork. It is well known that some cultures in the world have a special affinity for pork. The Italians, the Spanish, the Germans, and most certainly the Chinese. And these cultures have a very well developed cuisine for cooking with pork. So, growing up in a Germanic country with Chinese cultural background, the consumption of pork was a fairly mundane affair, so everybody did it. And the Germanics love their hams. So, to illustrate, a Dutch sandwich is called a boterham. And a boterham refers to a butter ham, actually. That's a translation of it. So, it is also quite normal for the Dutch to eat a pork belly, which is called speck. And pork is also hidden in many other products such as gelatinous candy and even some forms of bread. So as you can see, it is quite difficult to avoid the consumption of pork if you were not actively doing so. And as someone who grew up with Cantonese food, most should know that a few famous Cantonese dishes are char siu and siu yok, both of which are roast pork belly. So you can see how ubiquitous pork could have been in my upbringing. However, this was not the case because when I was young, very young, one of my best mates was a fellow who had a very strict Sunni Moroccan father and a non-Muslim Chinese mother. I would visit them once in a while and my friend would never eat pork. So because I felt like he was my best friend and I wanted to imitate him, I would do like anyone would, I would try to stop eating pork. And honestly, pork that is not well prepared, or the way it is prepared in some Germanic countries, really emits a very bad smell and has a very unpleasant taste. So this also fed my aversion to pork. So I went home. After I went home, I would ask my parents, can we stop eating pork? And obviously they would say, why? So that is when I became a very smart boy suddenly. And I said, well, I was born in the year of the boar. The Chinese zodiac calendar has animal zodiacs. So I said, well, if I eat pork, that is my own sign. So basically, if I eat pork, that would be akin to cannibalism, right? And they said, that is quite an interesting answer. And they thought this rationale was very cute, so they accepted, and we lessened the consumption of pork in the household. So years later, when I was talking to my father again and I was asking him how to prepare pork properly, he's vegetarian now, by the way, but back then he wasn't. He said, well, basically, there are two schools of preparing pork in China. And in the south, the Chinese usually prefer using a lot of ginger to get rid of the pork odor. And in northern China, they use a lot of star anise or anise and Sichuan peppercorn to get rid of the smell. So when you think about it, this is really strange. See, if something is smelly, that means it is unclean, right? So our bodies are repulsed by smelly things in order to keep us healthy so that we don't eat rotten things or filth. So if we were to apply this logic to, say, your own body, if you spray your body with deodorant and perfume because you started to smell, does that mean you have suddenly become clean? I don't think I have to give an answer to this. So the logic of using spice to cover up something smelly in order to make it clean is just wrong. So gradually, as a family, we began eating less and less pork, but also less meat in general, because my father became a vegetarian and he also practiced regular fasting. So he told me that during the fast, his nose would become very fine-tuned to any kind of smell, especially the smell of meat. So the people who had been eating meat and garlic or onions, he would find it revolting, actually. So given this past history, when I reverted to Islam, it was actually quite easy for the people around me to accept the fact that I don't eat pork, anymore, at least. So to this, I have to say, Alhamdulillah. I am grateful that I was given such an accepting environment, and I know that not every revert has the same opportunities and has the same ease when it comes to this kind of thing. especially those from cultures where eating pork is the norm. Perhaps it is possible to use traditions from your own culture or of origin to use as a reason why you don't want to eat pork, like I did. Or you can use scientific arguments or even ethical and moral arguments regarding the bioindustry as well as environmental impact to make a case on why one should refrain from pork. If your environment cannot accept your religious reasoning on its own, of course. So, yeah, that's what I wanted to share with you all. And thank you for listening, and peace and blessings be upon you. And I hope to see you again. Thank you.